Hey everybody, Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show. We are the show that is freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. Thank you so much for joining us. We're brought to you by Noble Gold. And as the Democrats continue to play obstructionists, it's clear they're going to do everything they can do to stop Trump's reforms, even starting World War III, collapsing the economy. And this is where I come in here with Noble Gold. Your bank account is at risk. Your retirement, if it's in the bank, is at risk. Dodd-Frank Law 2010 says the banks can keep it. You're number two. You're an unsecured creditor. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to extricate your retirement from the bank. Noble Gold will put it under your control and back it with an appreciating, not depreciating asset, gold or silver. You say, wow, that sounds easy. Yeah, it is. I have no retirements associated with the bank. I sleep better at night. They can do similar things for your bank account. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, folks, things are going to get ugly before January 20th, and the dollar's already in trouble. We know that. If a war breaks out, well, the economy is going to go to hell in a handbasket. Shouldn't you act now? Let me give you a number to call: 877 646 5347. 877 646 5347. Federal government wants me to tell you all investments carry inherent risk. Past performance can't be construed with future expectation. If you have an expert, consult with them. Now, having given that warning in good faith, I'm going to say this. I have been an advertiser for Noble Gold for 8 years. I've been a customer many times over, 7 years. 877 646 5347. We're going to talk about something that I've never talked about before. And I've been watching a number of accounts of this, and they're all anecdotal accounts. I suppose we could string together some data and make a research study out of it. But let me tell you what I have learned. And before you dismiss it, I'll give you research that kind of gives you a first cousin collaboration. The power of prayer. The last count I took, and this has been a few years, there are 17 studies that demonstrate that prayer has power. That's right. Tell you one quick story from one study. You say, why aren't there more studies? Do you see government funding story where Christ comes out on top? Not going to happen. All right, here's the story. They had two hospitals, same kind of patients, same conditions, basic same prognosis, average lifespan left to live with a condition, 6 months. They had people praying remotely from a distance, and all they were allowed to know was the person's condition and their first name. So it's pretty anonymous. This is a classic double-blind study. And in the study, what they did was absolutely phenomenal. They had one hospital's patients prayed for by the subjects, and they didn't have the other hospital. This would be the control group. The group that's prayed for is the experimental group, and you have to have that so you can have a comparison. I hope later they came back and prayed for those people when the study was done that they hadn't previously prayed for. So, what they found in the one study was that the people that were prayed for had more remission, they had more recovery, and they more than doubled the lifespan of the group that wasn't prayed for. Now, criticism of the study, do you get a level of significance? Like if you ran the study again, would your chances of having the same results and the same conditions vary less than 0.05? This is what you call your level of significance. And you see it in formulas. If you ever see a research study, it says P equals less than 0.05. They had something, I think, about 0.08, 0.09, if memory serves me correctly, but they were clearly on the way, and a few more studies would have brought that down. But no studies were funded along these lines, so we're having the one. So here's what we can conclusively say about this study. The trend curve seems to indicate there is a power to prayer. How much, how reliable remains unknown. Further research is warranted. That would be an appropriate conclusion for that study. Okay, now let's set that aside for a second and we begin to talk about near-death experience. And I'm going to really focus narrow because I think I'm going to do multiple reports over time on this because it is so convoluted. I've really looked at this for years and years, and I'm not mystical. This is not New Age. This is tied directly to Jesus. And the few accounts that I'm going to summarize and blend together all have Jesus as the central theme. So, what happens when you die? Well, actually, in physical research right now, this is now mainstream science. They're saying there's a gap between life and death and what goes on the in between. I suspect and I hypothesize that when you go through that gap on the way to death or coming back, in that gap is your near death experience. The vitals don't show heart rate, respiration, zero. We used to think if you were not functioning for 3 minutes, it's too late. We now have stories of 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. Some people claim longer. I can't verify that. But we've gone beyond the limits. And typically the experiences are remarkably similar for atheists, agnostics, and also for Christians. And what we find is they go through like a tunnel, a portal, um, and they approach lights. The experiences can vary, and I'm not going to get into all the details. I want to go right to the heart of the matter. What happens when you die? Well, some people think you lie at rest and you stay there until it's all over. Mm-mm. No, you go on to your next existence right there in heaven, and you have duties to perform. Your work is your worship, and your worship is your work. And one of the consistent themes that I'm seeing is this, is that we wonder why there are unanswered prayers or answered prayers, prayers that sometimes even result in what we might call the miraculous. And the way that I've seen it explained in many of these accounts is that when you pray in Jesus' name, you actually create like a portal, kind of a tunnel of sorts, that your prayer goes up and it gets the attention of the people doing God's work who are working actually towards establishing the kingdom on earth when heaven meets earth, Jesus' second coming. And this is a pretty consistent theme. But the people who are in heaven don't stay obsessed with their family members, their friends, and hang around their old haunts. No, that's mythical. But they do often are aware of what's happening to their loved ones. And many times a prayer will come up, and one of the divine missions of some of these souls that are in heaven is to act on that prayer on the Lord's behalf. And this is a theme that I see pretty consistently. And I'm one of those people that believes in faith, but we do have a minimal amount of science to support it that prayers move mountains. Prayers bring miracles. Prayers can do a lot of things. And I find it interesting that that tends to be a scheme here. And the message from Jesus is always consistent. When you go back, and they don't want to go back because it's so blissful, but when you go back, you need to tell people that this is real and you need to prepare in this life for the next life, which really says this is kind of a classroom. You might even call it a simulation. And I'm not going to go that far and say it's AI and all that. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying I think there is an aspect of learning here because we are granted unlimited amounts of forgiveness. If you do that one more time, I will divorce you or I will not be your friend. Okay, that's not the way the Lord works. How many times do you forgive? 7 times 70? Well, this is what we're blessed with because we're being prepared and hopefully we're coming closer to the Word, closer to Jesus for what our mission will be at the next level, our next stop. There is no death, and this is real consistent with near-death experiences. And atheists come back and they go, I'm just amazed, but I can't deny what I learned. If we had a few of these, some of the old biological theories about near-death experience might come into play. Well, it's just the brain dying from the outside in, and the people are hallucinating. Maybe, here's how far I can stretch it with that argument. If you're familiar with the Rorschach test, looking at ink blots and you contrive a story out of it, or it looks like an image you're familiar with. It's kind of like looking at the clouds and you see your Uncle Harry and his beard, or you see Snoopy the dog, or whatever. The Rorschach test kind of tells the person administrating it in psychoanalytic theory where your mind is at based on subjective perception. Okay, so could that be applied to the near death experience? Perhaps. But what we get is so consistent among people. Now, there's variances, I agree, and there's anomalies, but there's also very consistent themes. And this is what would make a really good research study for a doctoral thesis, but you'd probably have to do it in a Christian university. You get drummed out of a secular woke university. But do a qualitative analysis that's descriptive, not statistical. Do a qualitative analysis of near death experience. And you start listing the commonalities, but now you begin to have some data sets that support your descriptive conclusions. Well, near death experience people, this many report this many report this. This is a very common theme. 75% say this. And then we can start to look at it and say, is there something consistent here? And when there is, then I think we have to take notice and say, okay, well, what is this telling us? What is this telling us? And I think this is a fascinating area. I truly do. And it's something that I think that all of us might want to step back and take a look at. By the way, one of the things I see in some of these accounts of people that die and come back is they repeat the warning from the Bible. Don't use the instruments of the evil to communicate with those souls in heaven, with departed ones. They have missions to complete. They're not there to be called through a Ouija board or tarot cards or anything like that. When you pray, you often get their attention, is one of the themes we hear. But we are not to use these, what I think are occultic summoning devices for the dead in heaven, the seance mentality. We're expressly forbidden as Christians to do that. So, anyway, please add what your account is of this. If you have any experiences, love to read them, love to hear from you. Okay. You can email me, put things in our description box, you can do a number of things. But I'm really curious as to what you think. And I think as we enter into this new age where they're trying to rewrite the Bible using AI, and Bill Gates, the Pope, and the World Economic Forum are part of that. I think we need to be really strong and resolve in our faith. And I think the more that we can find out about things like this and to show people that this life is just a temporary stop, don't bend the knee to the evil who will put you in a much warmer place when your days on this planet are concluded. For your edification, thank you for joining us. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter. Go to thecommonsenseshow.tv. We have the HIPS series. This kind of applies to a HIPS kind of approach with that kind of show that we do there. And then we have our geopolitical, we have our expert guests. It's a really good experience. Thecommonsenseshow.tv. Sign up today.